The next time you see Max Verstappen throw a car into a corner and somehow make it stick, remember this. That entire habit is about to collide with a completely different set of physics. And it might be the first time in years that Max's biggest strength becomes a question mark instead of a cheat code. Because 2026 isn't just new rules. It's a new problem. Smaller, lighter cars, active aerodynamics, and a power unit philosophy that shifts the performance battle away from pure aero load and into energy timing, deployment, and traction behavior in ways most fans still aren't clocking. And here's the uncomfortable thought. Max's driving style has been optimized for an era where you can build lap time by living on the knife edge of front-end bite, rotating the car aggressively, and trusting the platform to stay stable enough to let you commit. But what happens when the platform itself is changing state mid-lap? When the car is actively switching aero modes, when electrical deployment becomes a bigger swing factor, and when the fastest way might not feel like the fastest way? That's the real story people keep missing. And we can prove it early with one blunt line Max has essentially lived by. Understeer is death. He's been explicit about it. If a car understeers, it's basically impossible to be truly quick. Now zoom in on what 2026 is quietly designed to do to drivers who rely on that sharp front-end philosophy. The 2026 package aims for closer racing by changing both chassis and power unit fundamentals. More emphasis on electrical power, tighter energy management, and active aero systems that alter drag and downforce profiles across the lap. That means the car you turn into the corner may not be the same aero personality you have in the middle, and definitely not the same car you have on exit. Let that sink in. Max's signature advantage isn't just bravery, it's the way he compresses decision-making. He commits earlier than most drivers, and when he senses the front axle is there, he attacks the rotation phase like he's trying to finish the corner before the corner finishes him. That's why Red Bull cars, especially in their peak years, often look like they pivoted around his hips. The car rotates, the nose points, the rear follows, and Max is already thinking about the next braking zone. But active aero introduces something drivers hate: transitions that can feel like a moving floor. One moment you have more load, then the car sheds drag for the straight, then it has to rebuild stability for the next braking phase. If those transitions aren't perfectly predictable, the driver starts paying a hidden tax. Micro lifts, delayed commitment, and conservative entries, exactly the things that erase Max's superpower. And this is where the 2026 physics part becomes brutal. People talk about power units like it's just horsepower. It's not. It's where torque arrives, how smoothly it arrives, and what the driver must do to keep the rear tires alive while harvesting and deploying energy in the right windows. The 2026 power unit rules are structured to increase the relevance of electrical deployment and energy management alongside 100% sustainable fuel, and that shifts the lap time puzzle toward timing and control. Translation: the sport is moving toward precision performance, not just maximum performance. Now ask yourself a nasty question. Be honest, who benefits when the fastest lap is no longer the lap that feels the most aggressive? Because Max's whole thing is that he makes aggression look clean. He doesn't just drive on the limit, he relocates the limit. But in an energy-managed aero transition world, the limit can become situational. 2 laps with identical driving can produce different outcomes depending on deployment state, temperatures, and aero mode timing. That's not romance. That's math. And yes, that should scare everybody, including Red Bull. Here's why. Red Bull's modern identity has been built around producing a car with a sharp front end and a narrow window that Max can access more consistently than anyone else. When it works, it looks unfair. When it doesn't, it looks peaky, unpredictable, and brutal for the second driver. That pattern has been widely discussed for years, including by people inside the team orbit. Now inject 2026 volatility into that system and you get a very specific risk. The Max-friendly setup philosophy could become harder to stabilize across conditions because the car's behavior is being influenced by more moving parts, active aero states and power delivery/energy strategies, on top of the normal tire and balance variables. That's insane. And here's the twist. This doesn't automatically mean Max will be worse. It means his advantage may change shape. And if Red Bull misreads what that advantage actually is, they could build the wrong kind of Max car. Because Max's advantage isn't only the pointy front end, it's his ability to learn the car's language faster than other drivers, then rewrite the conversation. When he says a car can't be fast with understeer, he's not being dramatic. He's telling you what his entire operating system rejects. So if 2026 pushes teams towards safer, more understeer stable platforms to manage energy and aero transitions, Max is going to fight that instinct. And the team will have to decide, do we build a car that is easier for the engineers and the simulations, or do we build the car that Max can weaponize even if it's harder to live with? That decision will decide championships before most fans even realize the season has a theme. Now here's the first big reveal you can hang on to early. 2026 could punish any driver who relies on one perfect car mood. The most valuable driver might be the one who can be fast across multiple car states: high load, low load, harvesting, deploying, different aero modes without needing the car to feel the same every lap. And that sounds like Max, until you realize something else. Max's most devastating laps often come when the car is alive at the front and he can rotate it hard on entry, trail brake, pivot, and go. That style thrives when the front tires can bite and the rear can be managed with throttle discipline. But if energy deployment and aero transitions change the rear stability at the worst moments, corner entry and early traction, then the car can become allergic to that rotation. In other words, the physics could push him toward a style he doesn't naturally love. So what would that look like? It would look like Max doing something he rarely has to do when he's in control: waiting a fraction longer before committing to turn-in, a fraction less trail brake, a fraction less rotation. And if you remove those fractions from Max, you remove the part of him that makes other drivers feel like they're racing a different sport. Read that again. Now, smart fans, subscribe. Because if you're still thinking this is just new rules, same Max, you're missing how deeply these regulations can change what fast feels like, and why the next era might be decided by the drivers who can tolerate the most uncertainty without blinking. And here's what nobody is talking about. Active aero doesn't just affect top speed, it affects braking references and corner entry confidence. If the car is shedding drag differently, if downforce is being managed differently, the driver's muscle memory gets rewritten. That's where mistakes come from, not talent. Timing. Now let's put Max next to the 2026 environment in a way most analysis doesn't. Max is exceptional at driving the platform at the edge of stability. You can see it in how he corrects slides early, small, fast inputs, rather than letting the car drift into big moments. That style is perfect when you're managing rear slip without overheating the tires. But 2026 asks a new question. Can you do that while also managing deployment, harvesting, and aerostate transitions without losing rhythm? Because rhythm is the hidden currency in F1. Drivers talk about confidence, but confidence is just rhythm you trust. And energy-managed racing can break rhythm. You're not always driving for this corner. Sometimes you're driving for the next straight. Sometimes you're driving to keep the battery in a window. Sometimes you're compromising entry to protect exit because the deployment profile favors exit. That means the fastest driver isn't always the one who attacks the corner the hardest. It's the one who sequences the lap like a plan. Now, do we really think Max can't do that? Number. He absolutely can. He's one of the smartest racers on the grid. The real danger is something else. If Red Bull's car concept in 2026 is designed around a narrow, aggressive balance window, and the new systems make that window harder to keep open, then Max might be forced into damage limitation more often than he's used to. And the moment Max is forced into limit the damage, the field suddenly looks very different. Be honest, who's actually panicking right now? Red Bull or everyone who's been praying the rules reset finally breaks them? Because the political tension of a regulation reset is always the same. Teams that were behind want a reset big enough to flip the order, and teams that were ahead want a reset they can control. And Red Bull is entering 2026 with a massive internal pressure point. They want continuity of dominance, but the rules are designed to disrupt predictability. Here's the uncomfortable consequence. If Red Bull builds a car that is Max sharp, But 2026 systems make it too nervous. You don't just lose lap time, you lose development clarity. Suddenly the engineers are chasing correlation issues. Is it aero mode? Is it deployment mapping? Is it tire temp? Is it mechanical platform? And if you can't isolate the cause quickly, your upgrade path becomes messy. That's how dynasties end. Not with a crash, with confusion. And it's not hypothetical. Teams have talked before about how difficult it can be when the car's performance window is narrow and fixes create new problems. Now let's escalate this with a detail that sounds small but isn't. The smaller/lighter 2026 cars and revised aero concepts mean teams will be balancing efficiency and stability even harder. When you chase efficiency, you often accept a more sensitive car. When you chase stability, you often accept understeer. Max hates understeer, so Red Bull has a fork in the road. Option A, make the car stable, friendly and consistent, something that might help the team operationally, but could cap Max's peak. Option B, make it sharp, alive and aggressive, something Max can exploit but which might be harder to keep in phase with active aero and energy systems. Was that genius or desperation? And if you were a team boss, what would you do today? Because this isn't just about Max, it's about who gets to define fast in the 2026 era. If the sport rewards efficiency and management more than raw corner violence, you might see drivers who've been close to Max suddenly look equal over a stint, not because Max got worse, but because the rules narrowed the value of his strongest weapon. Now here's a pattern interrupt that flips the whole argument. Max's greatest advantage might actually survive 2026 better than people expect, but in a different form. Not the pointy car, the adaptation speed. In every major shift, the first few races are often won by the team-driver combination that stabilizes the feedback loop fastest. Driver identifies the limiting behavior, engineers translate it into direction, upgrades land without breaking correlation, and the driver extracts confidence immediately. That's where Max can still be terrifying, because if Red Bull produces a foundation that is workable, Max can compress the learning curve and turn small advantages into psychological ones like he has before. And once psychological momentum starts, other teams begin making reactive decisions. That's when mistakes happen. So the question becomes sharper. Does 2026 create chaos long enough for rivals to capitalize? Or does Max shorten the chaos window so much that the reset fails to reset? Now we're in the real story. The sport is heading into a physics era where lap time is more distributed. Less of it comes from pure downforce brute force, and more comes from how you manage the whole lap system. And Max is elite at system racing, strategy, tyre timing, defending, attacking, reading rivals. If the car gives him a baseline, he can still do what he does best, make the race feel inevitable. And if you love this level of analysis, you're not a casual fan. Elite timing, subscribe. Now I want you in the comments for this one because people will fight over it. Does 2026 reward smooth managers or knife edge attackers? And which category is Max in when it really matters? Pick a side, because not commenting is basically letting someone else write the narrative for you. Now for the payoff, because this isn't just a philosophy debate. There's real risk on the table. If 2026 introduces a more complex performance map, active aero, energy management, new operational constraints, then the difference between a championship car and a fast sometimes car could be smaller than ever. And in that world, Max's driving style becomes a multiplier, only if the car responds predictably to aggression. If it doesn't, his style can become expensive. Not in crashes, Max is too controlled for that now, but in tire temperature spikes, in traction losses, in tiny confidence taxes that accumulate. That's the part fans miss. The best drivers don't usually fall off. They get forced into margins where they can't be themselves every lap. So what should you watch for to see this early? Watch the corner entries where Max usually creates separation, medium speed entries where rotation matters, and the car needs to accept trail brake without snapping. If the 2026 car concept makes those entries less stable due to aerostate transitions or torque delivery behavior, Max will look normal for the first time in a while. And if Max looks normal, the grid gets dangerous, because then it's not about whether he's still the best. It's about whether the sport's new physics allows the best to create the same gap. That's what could change everything. Now here's the final reframe. Max Verstappen's driving style isn't just a style, it's a demand. It demands a certain relationship between front axle authority and rear axle compliance. It demands a platform that lets him rotate without begging. It demands a car that rewards commitment. 2026 might still reward commitment, but it could punish commitment that isn't synchronized with energy and aero state timing. That means the next era isn't about being fearless, it's about being fearlessly precise. And if anyone can become the perfect 2026 driver, it's Max. But the real danger, for Red Bull and everyone else, is that the margin for error in building the right kind of car has never been thinner. So I'll leave you with this. Is this the start of dominance, or the start of a sport that finally stops letting one driver bend physics to his will? Keep going, subscribe. And if you want the next piece of the puzzle, watch the video on your screen about the RB22's hidden limitation signals in testing. Because once you see how those signals form, you'll never watch a fast lap the same way again.